the campaign's statement type of stuff is probably not what we're going to be looking for. It's not what we're going to be looking for. We're not going to be looking for the, I want to run because I want to serve. We assume you want to serve and give back, blah, blah, blah. This is going to be really policy specific. So we'll start with you, Bob, and what I'd like you each to do is take 1 minute, and what I really want to know from you is what are, say, the top 4 policy issues. And you don't have to elaborate on them. I just want to know what the issues are so that I can get a feel for where the overlaps are and what you guys consider important, okay? And then we'll go from there. Okay, start with you, Bob.
Okay, I first is probably closing the income gap that the President has talked about in income inequality. The second would be education and funding properly education. Third would be, I have a Made in California's job, so it's creating new jobs and economic opportunity. And the fourth would be, I'm the chair of Judiciary, so properly funding our courts and having access to justice for all.
Mary?
Of course, I have many priorities, but if I had to name a few, I would start with investing education and making sure we have strong schools. With Obama healthcare implementation, we're expanding coverage to a lot of Californians, so making sure that people not only have coverage, but access to high quality healthcare services. And of course, the drought and the water policy, I believe, is one of the most important things we need to tackle this upcoming year. And working to improve local job situation and economy, and people have access to workforce training and job training opportunities so that they can be part of the workforce. So those are, I would say, 4 top priorities.
Yes,
job. And thank you both for just being right to the point. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Number 1 priority for me will be jobs, to bring manufacturing jobs back to Fremont. And secondly, create a R&D for renewable energies. And we have LED light bulbs that is ready to be manufactured right here in the States. And that's number 2. Number 3 is education. I feel our K-12 has been failing our kids. We're ranked 47th in the nation, and we spend half of our general funds in it. I think we need to improve that. And finally, I want to make sure that this SCA 5, the Constitution Amendment number 5, doesn't get through, and make sure that affirmative action doesn't come back in this form that it is right now.
Let me ask each of you, and let's start with you, Peter. Your assessment of the current state budget, your assessment of the current condition of the state budget.
Although Governor Brown say that we have $5 billion in surplus, but we are facing a huge pension liability of $33 billion. I feel strongly we need to work with the unions to make sure that they realize what they are doing is detriment to their own future, and so we need to fix that.
Mary?
Well, we've certainly increased more funding for education, which I very much support. But I think one of the struggles that we have is fully funding the new core, the new core development that we're trying to emphasize here in California. We have this new standards where math and English subjects are now, we're trying to have some sort of a standard where teachers get training and have enough money to fully implement that. We also need to, work on getting Medi-Cal cuts restored, because 1 in 3 Californians are on Medi-Cal now, and it's who are currently covered. So, access is going to be an issue if people have healthcare coverage, but if we don't have enough providers. And one of the exciting opportunities, I think, moving forward, because when I served, our budget, I think, 1 year was $88 billion, and it's now almost 150. So you could imagine how much we had to cut, to balance the state budget during the tough times. And one of the sort of challenges moving forward, I think, is a lot of people want everything back, and one of the things that I don't support is bringing redevelopment agencies back, because I believe that we should continue to allocate those resources to schools and public safety. And I think, you know, we could consider some efforts if we have enough money. So I think it's really making good policy decisions and not, you know, bringing back things just because we have more money.
Bob?
I think the condition of the state budget is much better than we had anticipated. I think the governor has been frugal in his projections, and that's being played out right now. We know that this current budget that will end on June 30th, we're looking at 1.5 billion in excess revenues. And I say excess revenues, greater revenues than we had anticipated. We're going to have the May revise in 2 weeks, and I think we're all anticipating somewhere between 4 and 6 billion more revenue coming in than what the governor had projected in January. So people are paying their taxes. We have more money coming in. How we spend that, you know, the governor can talk about the wall of debt. I think as a bankruptcy practitioner, I tend to look at 3 bundles. One is paying some debt off. One is doing investment in infrastructure, and the other is the entitlements, these programs that have been underfunded. Do we want to put some money back into them? It's not that much money.
As a bankruptcy practitioner, you lost me. Okay, I mean.
Well, I'm used to doing a balanced approach when you reorganize. So you just don't pay all the debt off, or you just don't pay new programs. You take some in investment, some in debt, and some in restoring the programs that you have.
Well, let's talk about one of those big debts. Start with you, Bob, and that is CalSTRS. What's the solution there?
Well, we know that.
First of all, explain the problems.
Okay, so the retirement system for teachers is the CalSTRS program. And I'm a member of the Committee on Public Retirement Programs. We've had 3 information hearings. We've been briefed on the constitutional limitations that we have.
You're on Bontis Committee.
Yes, I've been a member when it was Florentino's. So we're approximately $71 billion, give or take a couple of $1 billion off. Part of the problem has been the recession that we just came through, where the revenues that people would anticipate weren't coming in. I mean, Lehman Brothers has a bit of a responsibility for the problems that we have. What we've come to target is that we need to come up with 14 points of how to improve it, which is about, think of each 14, it's about $300 million per percent. 14%, I guess, percentage point, right. So right now, the state is contributing about 3.0, 3.1, and historically, we've contributed 4.607. I just happen to remember that number. The employees are contributing about 8, the employers are contributing about 8.5. So we got to come up with 14 more. Now, Mr. Brown has suggested maybe the state will, he doesn't want the state to pay anything, but I think I've said in public at the committee hearings that I think we should go above that 4.6, something less than 5%. So we would pick up about 3 percentage points. Constitutionally, we
The
can.
state should go up to about 5.
Right, something a
That'd be
little
about
bit.
2. That'd be about 2 more.
2, right. And then these employees would pick up 2. Constitutionally, we can, so that would leave 10 for the school districts, which would be more than double what they're paying right now. And that gets you to 14. Now, performing on that, but
It wouldn't, it would, yes, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
The districts would pick up 10.
right, I've also been an advocate for, with this 1.5 billion that we have now, is having the state pay more now, because if you pay more earlier, then the targets come down. It's what the actuarials will tell you. So we have a unexpected income that's come in, and I think $600 million if the state would pay right now would help bring that target down and bring us.
Okay, so what would the extra 2 points cost the state?
600. It's 300 million per point, so it's 600 million,
Okay.
and the employees 600 million.
Mary, what do you think of that?
So, well, I had a feeling you were going to ask me, so I actually brought some numbers just so that I can get it right. I think the state currently pays 5%. It's not 2.5. I mean, according to LAO, it's 5% right now. and 8.25 by the
Well, I
districts.
think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there are two things into which the state pays, and what we're talking about is the main pension plan. Do I have that right? They also pay into a separate.
Right, and we're not paying as much as we historically are supposed to be paying, that's
So
the
I
catch.
think that may be where the confusion is, but I may be wrong.
So-
on that.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
I mean, you know, the problem with, I mean, the issue with the CalSTRS is unlike CalPERS, as you know, the contribution levels are set by the legislature, and you just sort of wonder, maybe that's the problem, but anyway.
Yes, it is.
No, I'm just making a joke, actually.
No, I'm not making a joke.
Because, you know, I think, you know, when you look at the problems that sort of caused for CalPERS to be in this situation is because, you know, part of that is you know, CalPERS is, you know, managed by CalPERS, and CalSTRS levels are set by the legislature. But one of the single most, you know, issue that they sort of reference is, you know, during the .com years, they stopped contributing. You know, when we actually had money, you know, the employers stopped contributing, and we did a legislation 2 years ago to sort of fix that, so that during good years we can continue to contribute.
You haven't fixed it for CalSTRS.
I thought we did. I thought that was part of the AB 340,
No, CalPERS,
not CalSTRS.
no.
Okay, well, according to LAO, we did. So, because that AB 340 applies to
I mean, if
teachers
we-
and public employees, to both. So, and so I think, you know, sort of understanding what the cause was, you know, what sort of caused the problem with respect to, you know, the situation. And do you want me to wait for
Yeah,
Roman?
hold on one second, Mary.
Okay.
Let's let Roman come on.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the question?
Roman?
Oh, CalSTRS, you know,
CalSTRS.
they have a unfunded liability
We're
issue.
in here. You're welcome. How are you doing? I'm Steve.
Hey, I apologize for being late.
That's okay. No, don't worry about it.
Who put the nail in the tire?
Hi, Roman, how are you?
Pleasure. Hey, Mary,
Hey.
pleasure.
Hi,
Hey,
I'm being
I apologize for
No
being
worries,
late. I'm
no
sorry
worries.
about that.
Roman, if you can,
Yes, sir.
we're gonna need
Yes,
you to
sir.
swing around here.
Yes, sir. Hey, Roman Reed.
Nice to meet you. Pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Great, and you guys
And
might
then
want to
we're
square
gonna
a
need
little
you
tighter.
to
Yes, sir.
cover up your
Yes, sir.
zone.
Yes, sir.
Okay, how do we do?
Okay.
Don't worry, I'll deodorant today. It's okay.
So do you want me to talk about my 4 priorities again? Start
No,
over?
I don't want you to
Okay.
talk about your 4 priorities. I want
So-
you to- we're gonna-
so
we're
just
gonna
to
come
wrap
back
it
to you,
up.
But we're on CalSTRS right now.
So just wrap it up. I mean, I think my, you know, sort of a short answer to a solution would be, you know, I mean, there's no way to get around this. You have to increase the contribution. I mean, the teachers don't even get Social Security. So I think, you know, working to solve this issue for teachers is very important. And, you know, we just need to figure out a way to find more money and increase the contribution levels by everyone.
Okay, Peter.
So we're talking about CalSTRS.
Yeah, and as you might recall, Bob sort of outlined that he actually basically, he's pretty much on target that we're off by about 14 points of payroll. I think it actually might be slightly more than that actually, but it's pretty close to that. And he's advocating the state should go from about 2.5 to 5, and that the employees should pick up another 2 points of payroll, which would bring them from 8 something to 10 something, if I recall correctly, and that the districts would then be left to essentially pick up the other 10. And so my question to you, Mary, and now to you, and then eventually to Roman, is what do you think of that?
I actually would agree with our approach to have the employees contribute to their own retirement funds.
Well, they are already.
That's increase it.
Yeah, I mean, they would go from 8 to 10, but most of that 14 would not come from them. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I would follow Bob's advice simply because I am not involved with this particular legislation in the past. So I would have to look at the numbers, but I would always advocate that the employees should always contribute towards their own retirement plan, and even start their own private retirement plan with insurance companies. There are solutions out there, I believe, that could.
Yeah, but
fix
that's
that.
not a solution to the CalSTRS problem.
Okay.
Right, I mean, that may be a long range, you may wanna go to a hybrid, but we sort of crossed that Rubicon with, cross that bridge with the, with AB 340 and kicked that idea aside,
Yeah.
for better or for worse.
Mhm.
The CalSTRS problem presents some different issues. Roman?
Yeah, you know what, we have to increase the contributions, I mean, let's do the simple math. If we don't have enough in there, we can't give it out properly. And I don't think it should be all the way borne on the shoulders of the workers, or all the way borne on the shoulders of the business. I think to have a proper solution, both sides need to come together and both give and take. Now, I would like to see the workers give a little bit, I think 2% is a little bit much. I'd like to see the workers maybe give 1%, and I think that and the business should give as well, even
And
more.
who should give us more?
The business side should give as well too.
Business
Yeah,
side?
CalSTRS should give as well too.
Well, CalSTRS
Yeah, I'm
doesn't
sorry,
give.
I'm mixing it up. I'm sorry, we should also have the 14%, all right, go from 8 to 10 on the workers. I'd go maybe 8 to 9 on the workers, and then we gotta make up the difference there. I mean, that would be a fair way to do it, I think. And again, I have not been in the legislature there, so I need to do more work on getting all the details in there, so that is my 30,000 square foot answer, but I will have to do more to delve deeper, to be perfectly
Okay,
honest.
so let's just quickly run through an equity question here and start with you, Ron. Because if you do this idea as Bob suggests, then you have a couple of issues here. One is that, and arguably the teachers have been paying their fair share all along, and frankly, this isn't their mistake that you're in this mess right now. The question though is, if you do the 2 points, if you will, from the state budget, or from the state, that's $500 million out of the state budget. But then you're also talking about, if we're using Bob's, 340 million a point? I think
Yeah,
it's-
320
Okay, you're
something.
talking about $3 billion more on schools, which you just cut school funding effectively by $3 billion. So, I mean, it's the same money, it's just which school pocket, it essentially comes in directly out of the state, if not directly, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but all three of you talked about education. Talk about now the trade-off we've just created here, and the balancing, because this is not, there's no free lunch here. If you take it from the schools, you've essentially taken it from the state funding for the schools, right? So start with you, Roman.
Yeah.
How do you address that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question, and needs a lot of work on it. So, both of my parents were teachers. Yeah, the teachers are giving back. They don't get Social Security right now. I mean, the teachers have given from themselves. My parents, they used to go down to, have to go down to Kmart and Target and buy out of their own pocket all these school supplies. They've already given enough. Look at, we need to be able to raise the coffers of our state budget. If we can be able to find medical cures, which I'm a Stem Cell Person of the Year award winner for, if we can lower the cost of health care, that's another way to be able to help our state budget be impacted, and then we can be able to pay for that $3 billion. Look at right now, we actually just started America's first human clinical trials to treat terminal melanoma cancer. Imagine the difference of being able to treat cancer. Right now, in 2009, all the corporate and personal income taxes in America was $1.6 trillion. That's all the money we brought in.
Okay, whoa.
Yes.
I wanna bring you
We
back
are,
to the problem we're facing.
we are, and that's why I'm trying to get through it along the way, because it's a very complex situation.
Well,
So it's
to
gonna take a
me,
little while.
it's a very, we can talk about
Well,
raising
yes.
revenues, and that's all
Yes,
fine,
yes.
but that's not going to solve this particular problem right
Yes,
now.
So exactly, the problem right now, we have to have more money in our budget for this. We can't born it all on the backs of the school teachers. That's not fair. If we could help correct our healthcare costs, we would have a boon of economic financing to be able to go for after this. So it goes up, it goes very far and comes back into this issue. It's going back in the state budget. Romans Law took every dollar Romans Law took out of the state budget and gave it funding. $6 came back into the state budget. All right, if we can build up the state coffers, just like John F. Kennedy said, rising tide lifts all boats. If we can raise that, then that's the better way. Why does it have to be a zero-sum game?
Bob?
I think on the issue of equity, it is a fair division because we have to remember that the school districts are the employers. I mean, we like to think of, father state government as funding everything, but they are the employers at the end of the day. And when you have your employees, they've got some skin in the game also. They're paying 8%. They want to have a solvent system. I think you can sell that to them.
I guess my question is not so much the division.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you said equity.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, right, and maybe equities is the wrong way of framing it, but you're right. But it's not so much. Your division makes some sense. The question though is then you all were talking about wanting to raise support for education, but you need to address then the reality that you've just given education a big cut. And so talk about the implications of that and how that dovetails into your original call for
Right.
more money for education, if you will.
It will be slowed. I think by solving the problem with CalSTRS and making us pay the true cost that we have to, the changes that school districts would like to make to catch up on the costs that we've made in the past are going to be slowed. And it's going to have to be more moderated in order to get to the levels that all of us would love to enjoy.
Mary, can you live
Well,
with that?
I mean, it's, these are tough choices, and I think, with respect to state budget, we're always gonna have to make choices. And if we're going to be solving CalSTR's solvency issue, I think, we kinda have to deal with it. So not dealing with it, I think, to me, would be more disaster. Oh, I forgot people are on the phone too.
Dan, let me ask a question.
Yeah, let's let Peter finish his answer, then we'll go, okay? Then go, by all means, yeah. Peter?
Yes, I feel strongly we should keep the promise we have for the teachers that has been retired. However, moving forward, I suggest we increase the accountability of the teachers and improve the standards for our children. I think a lot of money is going to the school administrators instead of the teachers. And also, we need to modernize our schools system using technology that we already have.
Yeah, okay, but I'm talking about this cut that you are indirectly doing to education.
I actually would recommend we teach teachers how to use their money properly. Don't buy houses they can afford. Don't buy cars they can afford. Simple, basic math. I've seen teachers bought houses that they couldn't afford and ended up having to lose it, declaring bankruptcy. And from small scale to a larger scale, that's happening all over
That's
the
how
place.
Bob gets his clients. Dan, go for it.
Yeah, I think we need to put these last two questions together, which, at least in my mind, you folks are running for the Senate seat, which is a 4-year term. Aside from all of the other things that you're talking about here, and you're wanting to increase this and you're wanting to increase that, during your term, your Prop 30 is going to run out. And that is a huge hunk of money, which was passed based on the notion that Jerry Brown said, hey, give us 4 years, give us 5 years, give us some time, and we'll straighten this budget out. Now, money is starting to come back in the budget, and within 2 years, you're going to start, unless you can get the voters to buy into all of this, you're going to lose about a $6 million bite, something like a $6 billion bite out of the budget, aside from any of these other things. How do you reconcile that? I mean, this is going to be during your term.
Mary?
Well, that's a good question, and Prop 30, of course, has two sunsets. I believe the sales tax is expiring in 2 years.
Right.
And the income tax is expected to expire in 2018, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's about a year behind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
17.
So yeah, so it's all, you know, so I mean, I obviously I would support extending those. And you know, the economy is better, but it's still sluggish. And the recent, I think, unemployment numbers are relatively still high. So I think we just need to balance all of these things. And I think the question that Dan asked, you know, about, you know, would we, this, you know, by fixing CalSTRS and increasing contribution by all parties, you know, he's saying, well, you're going to cut into education. And my answer is, well, I think we have to make those tough choices. Yes, I mean, you asked me what my campaign priority is. Of course, I want to protect schools. I want to increase funding for schools. But the reality is sometimes you have to make tough choices in the budget.
Let's put this in scale for some, because I think this is very important, what Dan just said, and let's put, you know, and let's do some numbers here real quickly. On the CalSTRS problem, to give it scale against the Prop 30 situation, Bob's solution of the extra 2 points from the state would be 600 million plus or minus. The extra 10 points from the school districts would be 3 billion plus or minus. That is, as we said, indirectly a funding cut. It indirectly is going to come from the state, right? Because you're essentially, and then as Dan points out, that all gets dwarfed when Prop 30 goes away. You know, you're talking about suddenly a combined nearly $10 billion hit, directly and indirectly, on the state budget. Bob?
Well, okay, so, true, but remember that it's the legislature that has to come up with the solution on the CalSTRS. We have to do something legislatively. I'll go back to that. I think we're gonna pick up a couple of $1 billion on our debt servicing, that we pay down the debt so in the future we're not paying it, so there's some savings there. I think
On your debt service for...
what we're paying back right now, the wall of debt.
Okay.
Right? We're not gonna be, if we pay
Okay.
it off, then we're not
Right.
paying the
Okay.
debt servicing. So there's a confidence that we're creating in the economy that it's hard to empirically say, is that worth $1 or $2 billion? But we're looking at our fourth on-time budget. There's the slow recovery in 4 years. You know, we're going to have to take a look at it in 4 years. But I think that there's that confidence of stability. It's probably a little shy of $6 billion. It's probably more in the $4 billion with the debt servicing and just generally improved economy, but I could be wrong. But I think at that time, then you look at it. You look at what the numbers are, because we can still continue on our frugal ways. I mean, we're not. I think this is a good investment with the money that we have, given the facts that we have now.
Roman?
I don't think we can continue legislating from the ballot box. I don't think we can keep going back to the voters and asking for more and more money. Look, in the technology boom that we
So
have.
what you're saying, let me cut through and
Yes, sir.
understand what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
You're saying you disagree with Mary on extending Prop 30?
I don't think we keep going. Maybe Prop 70. Let's say that Mary is right, and we are able to successfully extend Prop 30. That's one time. That's not going to happen a second, a third, a fourth, or fifth time. At one point in time, we
Okay,
need
so
to cut the
I'm
mainstreams.
clear what you mean, stop legislating for
Yes.
the
So
balance box.
all right, Prop 30. Right. That was a proposition that passed at the legislative ballot box. Are we going to do Prop 31, Prop 32, Prop 33 every single year from now until? No. At one point in time, we have to stop this. And the way to do this is to create another boon, a biotechnology boon here in California. And when we had our technology boon in California, our coffers were much larger, right? It's not a zero-sum game. I think that we can have, through healthcare and biotech, create more jobs, more money, and actually grow our budget and able to be able to cover these wonderful things. And when we can't, we're going to have to be frugal and make cuts. It's just too important.
Peter?
I'd like to look at this as a water bottle thing. Right now, our water bottle is almost empty, and the leak is continuing to going out. So without injecting more water and plug the hose that's leaking our budget, it's not. We can talk about this number all day, and nothing's going to happen. So I would propose that we bring jobs back to California instead of Toyota leaving to Texas, Tesla leaving somewhere else. Those things shouldn't have happened. we should make the environment very attractive for technology companies to bring their jobs here. And that's how you create the funnel that goes into the water goes to the water bottle.
Okay, let's shift a little bit to role of legislators. Well, first, before we go there, let me ask you a sort of quickie, if you will. High-speed rail funding is probably likely to come back to you guys soon. You certainly voted on it last year. Was it last year or 2 years? I've lost track of when it is. It was last year, wasn't it? Maybe it was 2 years ago.
I voted for it, so it's gotta be 2
2
years,
years,
yeah.
okay. Okay, so, Peter, if you had to vote on high-speed rail today, and funding high-speed rail, yes or no?
No, absolutely no, unless there's private funding for it.
When you say unless there's private funding, if there is some private funding, do you put in state funding?
Very little, I would say 20%. Simply because if you can't work with 80-20, you can't build this thing.
Mary, you voted for it before.
Of course, I was a
Would you
big.
vote for it again?
Well, I would like to support it, but I mean, obviously I have a lot of concerns given the recent, reports and, I think that any time when we are doing any public bond or publicly funded projects, that we need to have a full mechanism for accountability, transparency, how the money will be spent. So, I mean, I would like to be able to support it again. I love the concept, but I have been following your concerns, and I think we need to have some of those, accountability mechanisms in place.
What accountability mechanisms would you like?
Well, I think the High-Speed Rail Authority, has been dealing with some contracting issues. And, I think anytime you are using public funds and hiring contractors to do any work, I think they need to go through a process that everybody else has to go through in public contracts, for example. And so I think that accountability is really important. And, we have a lot of these, as you know, there's a lot of local government agencies like that too, where independent agencies have a lot of power, a lot of authority over money, and yet they're
Okay, so
allowed to get around.
Let me piggyback on high-speed rail for a second. So accountability is important to you in terms of contracting and such. If that's solved, are you good with it?
Well, that's an example, yes, of the things that needs to be done. And I think we need to have a plan.
A plan for
Financial plan, viability, feasible plan for funding it and getting it done.
Do you think one exists now?
I hope so. I mean, I think we got a lot of work to do there. I think that we need to build public trust, and we need to make sure that the feasibility and the finances to fund and, ask to voters to, support this project. I think we need to, make sure that we're using the best public process and process that.
I kind of feel like you're dancing around the question a little bit.
I supported it. I want to be
we
able.
know what the financing situation is. Pretty much, nobody really disagrees with what it is for the most part. The outline's pretty clear. I guess my question then to you is that good enough or not good enough for you?
I think it is. I mean, I would support with accountability. So.
Okay. So you think the financing is okay? You just want more accountability.
Yes.
On the contracting. Okay. Bob?
I would vote on high-speed rail again. I want to see
For it.
For it.
Okay.
So if it comes up as a senator, I would vote for it. I'm intrigued by Pro Tem Steinberg's idea of taking $5 billion in cap and trade and designating 20% or $1 billion per year towards the high-speed rail for the build-out. It hasn't been reduced to legislation. It's an idea right now, but I think there's a variety of transportation needs that that he has, and I think that that helps out on the financing side.
I would absolutely be in support. We live in a society of connectivity. This will help make our world come together even smaller so that we can all work with connectivity, but it should be in a public-private partnership. It's very important, just like we did with Roman's Law. Let me give you an example, and it goes to medical, but I think it actually
I
has.
don't want you to go.
Okay,
now.
yes,
I want
sir.
to ask the high speed
Yes,
roll.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well,
You would be in support.
the process is very similar. That's one thing. We have full transparency, and it actually have to have competitive bids. So that's why I wanted to compare those two, because you need to have full transparency and competitive bids.
Okay. Could you folks, and let me start with you, Bob, because I know you were involved with this behind the scenes. Could you talk about the role of a legislator when it comes to BART and the negotiations?
We have many hats as a legislator. One is being the chair of committees, the other is voting on bills on the floor, and the other is participating in our community and representing the people in the area that we're represented to. So within those definitions, assisting the public in resolving questions that they have with public agencies, including BART, is one of the roles that I think a legislator may take on. I don't think it's required. I think it's just like I don't think they're required to do a lot of things that aren't specifically under their bailiwick. I felt that it was important for me to try to assist the bargaining units and management to come to an agreement. And if one can be helpful in those discussions, then I think it's important, and I include that in the role that I see as a state legislator.
Mary?
Well, I mean, you know, if you're referring to the BART strike, you know,
BART strike and the negotiations, absolutely, that's exactly right.
you know, Governor Brown stepped in to try and facilitate, you know, so that we can prevent a major disaster. So I think certainly if a legislator could be helpful in preventing public safety issue or public health crisis, I think, you know, I think there's a role. I think it just varies in terms of what the request is and what the situation is. I wasn't in the legislature last year, so I wasn't able to assist, nor did they ask me to help.
If possible, I would legislate against BART employees from going to strike, simply because.
Okay, that wasn't the question.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
That-
my question is the role
Of the
of the
legislator.
legislator. We'll
Okay.
come to that question.
All right. The role of the legislature in BART strike should be involved, very involved, as far as making laws to prevent these things from happening.
That's not maybe I wasn't clear, and maybe you don't know the history, but Bob was involved behind the scenes during the negotiations. And I'm trying to understand what role a legislator should have in that milieu.
Should be very involved, absolutely.
Roman?
Legislators are statesmen and stateswomen. You have to have the highest of integrity. And I actually did have a problem with one of my competitors going over in the middle of the night to knock on Tom Bullock's home when he wasn't there and scared his wife who had heart issues. I don't think that was appropriate. As a statesman, at 11 o'clock at night, I will not be knocking on any doors. It is not appropriate. You should work properly with proper integrity and decorum.
You want to talk about that?
It was 11 o'clock in the morning. The material got that one little point, and it was after church because they go to Prince of Peace where Luke and Evan were baptized. So I know Tom and Gail. So nobody ever corrected that little, which seems apparently a big deal.
Well, let me ask you just before we wrap this up. I mean, there was a real feeling by some you were meddling. And there was a real feeling within among some directors, and certainly among our management, that they had enough to contend with without at least a half dozen legislators sort of freelancing. And most of them were not just simply trying to bring them together. They were basically pressuring Bart to settle. You were named as one of those people who were doing
Right, and my message to Tom was,
to Tom.
Blaylock, who is a BART director, was to keep negotiating. I did not have a solution, I did not say I have the answer. I says, please return to the bargaining table and continue to negotiate. That's why we set up the collective bargaining system. We have 3 million Londoners that are inconvenienced the last 2 days when their underground went on strike, and nobody calls for changing a law in London, even the Tory government. They just say, let's continue to negotiate and try to resolve our problems. So in my mind, I was attempting to be helpful, because I know all these people.
And you know it wasn't seen that way by many.
I do, I know, and I read the paper, it was 11 o'clock at night.
Well, it wasn't just that wasn't seen as being helpful. You realize that, right?
Right.
Okay. So then we get to the next question, which is, so what do we do about BART negotiations and the legislator's role in this? Because it's a good marker for for other issues. Real quickly, and that's just a yes or no. And then go down the table. We'll start with you, Peter. Should BART workers strike or not? Be able to strike or not?
No.
Mary?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Absolutely should have the right.
Okay, so Peter's the only one who does not who thinks they should not be able to strike. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Next question along the same lines. Are any of you familiar with the Costa Mesa transparency model
No.
in negotiations? Do any of you read our editorial?
I'll be looking it up on Google after this.
Okay. Costa Mesa does collective bargaining now by making all the written offers and counteroffers public as they go along, submitting them to independent outside financial review, and any deal is submitted to outside financial review and public comment before it's in any way finalized. Good idea, bad idea?
I'll start.
Yes?
I think it's a very good idea. And if you'll allow me to compare it to the medical process, it's exactly the process that we did with Prop 71 in Roman's Law. You're able to have full transparency, you're able to go there and present your case, and everyone or the general public is allowed to see every single dollar is spent and to see where the vote goes. Transparency is always the last support.
Okay.
I don't think it's a good idea.
Pardon?
I do not think it's a good idea. I don't have enough, this is the first I've heard about it, so I'll apologize for that, but generally,
I'm hurt.
generally when you go into negotiations, you want to give people the confidence that they can, there'll be some, their information and the give and take is in confidence before you actually reach an agreement. So with that little bit, I would say no, I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay, well we'll come back to that in 1 second. Mary?
Well, Dan, I don't feel like I know enough about it. And what you've described sounds very intriguing, but, you know, I just have so many questions how it would be implemented or how they're doing it, and if they're successful and if they're able to actually negotiate better. I mean, you know, I just have a lot of questions, so.
Okay. Peter?
Is this public employee unions are we
Yes.
talking about? In general, or
Yeah,
just?
public employee. This is a model being used down Costa Mesa right now.
Okay, I would agree, yes, it should be transparent.
Okay. I guess this goes to a bigger question, and that is, does the public have enough input into collective bargaining in the review of collective bargaining agreements?
One of the tenets of democracy is having dispersal of information. So no, I don't think that they are well enough informed. I don't think you'd ever go wrong by having all the information there at your hands. Now, if you don't want to read it, and if you turn your back and do it, that's fine, that's on you. But I would like to have the information available.
I don't know if the public's entitled to the every step of the negotiations that go
Well,
on.
I didn't ask you
With
what
collective
they're entitled
bargaining.
to every step. My question is, do they have enough?
Yes. I-
Right?
Well, I mean, right now, you know, they elect city council members, mayors, right, of local government, where they are school district electeds. You know, and they're supposed to be the watchdog for the taxpayers and the public. So I would say the current process should provide enough transparency at the local level.
No, I don't believe they have enough information. There should be more out there for all to see.
Dan, this is Ed. When you
Yeah.
finish up with
Go for
Bart,
it.
I have a couple questions.
Go for it.
My two questions, one is in the, and we'll take them separately. One is in the area of water, and the other is in the area of fracking. And let's take water first. I'm curious as to whether you support the BDCP process, and if you do, why? If you don't, what do you see as the solution for the Delta?
Let's start with you, Mary.
Sure. Were you talking about the Delta plumbing proposal by the
Yeah,
governor?
yes, I am.
Yeah, so I don't support that because I think proposing to build a delta doesn't really get at the supply issue. Because, you know, right now the fundamental problem is that we don't have enough water, so we don't have enough supply to send down. What are we sending down? So for that, you know, for that reason among others, I don't really support that proposal. I have several ideas, just in terms of our water issue. Right now, there's a Senate bill moving, I think it's SB 1120, and that calls for a comprehensive water inventory of the whole state because there are over 2,000 independent water districts in California. And at the state level, actually John Burton did a bill many years ago, but people seem to just ignore it. At the state level, we don't really know what we have. And so I think doing an inventory and establishing some sort of a clearinghouse at the state level, I think is really important because if we're going to plan for the future, we sort of need to know what we have. Number two, I think water management, when we say conservation, I think that's, you know, it's a good goal, but that's not enough, and we know that. So I think dealing with the supply issue, one idea is recharge, and you know, there's no regulation on groundwater, so Fran Pavley has a legislation trying to figure out how much groundwater exists and how much storage that will provide for future use. So I think this is a time to look at that. And you know, reducing demand, of course, is very important. 80% of our state water supply right now goes to agriculture, and even the farmers agree that, you know, hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland need to be retired. So we have farmers in places where there is no access to water, and they don't have water supply, and it's extremely expensive to get water. Dan is like signaling me, so I'm gonna like wrap it up super quick here. So I think that's another idea. You asked about fracking. One of my concerns.
We're going to take that separately. Why don't we?
Oh, okay. So those. Okay.
Okay, we need to flush it. We need to stop flushing our fresh water into the ocean, trying to save the smelt. That's my opinion on water. We need to look at technology like Israel has been doing, is the desalinization of ocean waters for city folks in LA.
Do you support the BDCP, the Twin Tunnel Project?
Do I support it?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that good?
Well, my original question was if you support it, why? And briefly.
It would help bring the water down to people in LA if we don't have that desalinization plant yet. And water is critical for our agriculture, and we're all hurting for water right now. So we can also look at the drip-in irrigation system. Technology is out there to help the farmers to reduce their water consumption and yet grow the crop that they needed.
Roman?
No, I would not support a second pipeline. would take cue from John Garamendi, and I do 100% believe we have to take an inventory of all of our water. How can we make proper legislation not knowing exactly how much water we have? And with over 2,000 water agencies, this is going to be a very robust project that needs to be taken care of. So we need to find out how much water we have and then legislate properly. And no, I don't support the second tunnel.
Dan, I don't support the twin tunnels, even though I know that the financing plan by the governor is to have the users pay for it. And even though I know that Santa Clara Water District and Alameda County Water District will benefit from the tunnels, I'm mindful of the fact that the levees are not going to last forever. But on your question, I think as you follow the water bills that are going through, I would anticipate that we have a bond, the grandson of the bond, of the water bond on this November election. I think that touches on the categories. I'm in favor of the Assembly's version. This is headed by Mr. Rendon, which gives money to storage, gives money to water quality, gives money to some legacy cleanup, gives money to conservation, but doesn't earmark anything. We're not favoring the Delta, we're not favoring LA, and we're going to put more in the line of $6 billion to assist us. And obviously conserve, like everybody else has said.
Okay, and in terms of fracking, do you support the moratorium on the fracking that's being proposed? And just what is, just really briefly, some of your position on fracking itself?
I do support the moratorium that's being proposed by Senator Mitchell, and it just got through successfully the Senate committee. I think it's very important that we know exactly what is happening with fracking. It's been around for 52 years, and we don't know the exact causes. Is it causing earthquake? Is it polluting our waters? We don't know. It's very violent underground, and we need to know the exact peer-reviewed group review of what exactly is the outcome of fracking. Until we know that, we should have moratorium.
I do not support the ban on fracking. As everyone knows, I introduced the first bill to bring transparency to the issue of what was going on with fracking. I spent 3 years of my life working on 2 bills that were defeated by a combination of the oil companies and the environmentalists. And what we have now, as a result of that work, we have regulations that have been promulgated that will provide for pre-notification to landowners, a disclosure of how much water is being used, disclosure of where the water is going, monitoring of the wellheads after, a website that goes up, complete disclosure of the chemicals that are used in the frack, and also if you claim trade secret, that we created a private right of action for any citizen that would be affected by that if the executive director of Dogger did not challenge the trade secret claim. Those are the regulations. That brings transparency so we know what is going on. I'm proud of that.
You're on, Mary.
Okay, well, I support moratorium on fracking. My main reason is because of pollution in the water and water quality issues. There are 2 basin water districts down south, San Fernando and San Gabriel, both have groundwater pollution problem. And this has been going on for decades. And with respect to groundwater, once the pollution gets in, and this was caused by old defense industry that was based there, it takes decades to clean that up, and it contaminates basically drinking water for, a lot of people. And so for that reason, I would support a moratorium on fracking.
Peter?
Actually, I would agree with Bob. In addition, I will also implement a higher standard to make sure that it does not pollute underground water.
You want to follow up on that anymore, Ed?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Ed, I said Dan.
Quickie. It's dead, we know. But was the Chuck Reed initiative a good or a bad idea, and why? Let's see. We'll be mixing this up. Let's start with you, Peter.
It is a good idea. We definitely need to look at the unfunded liability we have in pension and face it and fix it. I just don't know why it was posed by so many union members without looking at the truth that will be facing them in less than 8 years.
I oppose that, and I think I think the local government should have the ability to negotiate their own contracts with their local government employees, public employees. They're elected.
How does that conflict with the reading?
Well, I mean, if the local government leaders are doing their job and managing their pension,
You said that they should have the ability to negotiate their own contracts. How would the READ initiative undermine that?
Well, are you referring to the one that he had proposed locally, or the state level?
The state level.
Because locally, he was trying
The
to,
state level is what I'm talking about, the state
Okay.
initiative.
remind me again what's in there, because the local initiative that he tried to do, try to go back to the existing contract, I thought.
The statewide initiative addressed the ability to negotiate prospective accrual rates.
So, okay, why can't local government leaders, when they negotiate contracts, negotiate equitable contracts, and that is balanced, and that is fair for their local government? I mean, why, it should be up to the local leaders and their bargaining unit.
Well,
I thought it was a bad idea. I think it creates a divisive atmosphere, although I'm mindful that it'll probably come back. I think that we are going to have to start paying the true cost of our pension programs and the benefits that we promise folks. The Constitution of the state of California says that we cannot make a law that impairs the right of contract. So we have some constitutional limitations. I understand both sides of it, but I'm stuck with the law.
wasn't that what the initiative was trying to do, is address the law, so we weren't stuck with the law?
And I thought it was a bad idea.
Because, so the problem is then not that you're stuck with it, the problem is you don't want to change it.
In the ballot box, correct. I would.
How would you change it, or do you want to change it anywhere?
I don't want to change it.
Okay, fine,
Yeah.
I just want to isolate,
Fair.
okay, saying we're stuck with the law is a tautology in this case, right?
Agreed.
Okay.
I oppose. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it went too far. I think the voters can successfully be able to elect proper officials and be able to trust in them when they do it. And if they do wrong, then you vote them out. I think it was unnecessary.
Do you think it's broke?
As it is right now, the system it seems to be working for most. Every system can be improved, and every system has its flaws. But I think that went too far.
Okay, so while we're at it, since you sort of answered that question, I want to come back.
Yes, sir.
And each of you give me your 1 minute or 90-second assessment of whether you think the system is broke or not, whether it's working well, and what, if anything, you think might not need to be done.
The pension system or the system and
The pension system,
This is,
I'm sorry.
we got 80% on pension. This is okay. This is part of the trouble that we have with the pension system, in my mind, has been the recession that we went through and what the Lehman Brothers and speculative people did that did not allow for an adequate return on some of the investment dollars. It's created an atmosphere where the already underfunded system became greatly underfunded. To put all the blame on the employees and to say, woe is us, you need to bear all the responsibility does not, in my mind, reflect the gravity of the problem. I think cities and the state enjoy the work of the hard work of their employees, and they like to provide for them, although it's not provided for state legislators, a pension that they can retire on. and I will, continue to fight in that vein.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I support, support public employees to have pension. I support Social Security, so I think retirement security is very important. Do I think that there's room for improvement? I think, looking at City of Stockton issue and some of the local government struggles with respect to this issue, yes, there's obviously improvements to be made there. But I also go back to the local government leadership at the local level because, some cities, and I don't want to name them here, but some cities basically do 100% contribution to, let's say, for example, police officers, while they make everybody else contribute. So I think, we need to sort of push the local government leaders to fix local government budget and pension liability issues. At the state level, we've done some great things to eliminate abuse. I mean, you know all this because you were sort of the architect in pushing a lot of those proposals. And I think, we've done all of that at the state level. So, fundamentally, I believe that people should have retirement security, and I support them to have public pensions so that they can retire and that's why I support Social Security.
Peter?
Yes, the system is broken, and we absolutely need reform. Not tomorrow. We need to do that as soon as possible. Simply because if this unfunded liability of pension that we have, that we committed to our public employees,
What would you do?
I would keep the progress that we made, start a new system to ensure its viability, and have the higher standard that has a lot of accountability in it.
How does that differ from PEPRA? Maybe from the pension reform law?
It is to actually enforce it and make sure that the math adds up.
I'm the product of two union workers. My parents are teachers. They live now, retired off of their pensions. How could I look my parents in the eye and say, I'm trying to go after your pensions, what keeps you alive? That's not right. Look, I grew up playing football. You can't change the goal line after the game's over. All right? These people have worked, they're retired, and now they're entitled to their rightful pensions. And I also would like to know how exactly do we have the number proper for the pension liability? Is it $200 billion? What is it exactly? It's very easy to be a scapegoat and put it all on the worker and say this pension booga booga booga, and now they're in trouble. And so I want to know exactly how much the pension liability is, and I don't think it needs to all be borne on the backs of the workers.
Finally, have you guys signed any pledges?
I did that smoking pledge.
Smoking pledges?
The cigarette pledge.
I don't know.
I mean, not to smoke cigarettes, and not to take tobacco money.
Okay, not to take. What about any agreements or questionnaires from any group?
Well, we've all filled out questionnaires. I mean, I just got the Fremont Chamber of Commerce endorsement, so I know I filled out their questionnaire.
Okay. One of the Assembly candidates, as you guys all know,
Mr. Glasser?
Mr. Glazer,
Glazer?
yes, has proposed that everybody put their questionnaires out there so people can see it. Problem with that? You good with that?
I'm not putting it out,
Okay. Why
Yeah.
not?
because it's between the applicant, the Sierra Club, and myself. Yeah.
Evergreen.
I'm not getting endorsements, so obviously I'm not very effective at getting endorsements.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that Labor and Chamber have asked for candidates to sign candidate questionnaires.
Have you
I
signed
don't.
it?
I've submitted the one. I mean, I submit if they ask me. I have not been invited to all the processes. I have not been invited to be interviewed by certain labor organizations. So I did, participate as much as I could, and I filled them out because I respect their process.
Do you have a problem with making it public?
I have to think about that.
Yes,
Have you filled out any questionnaires?
yes, I have, and Yeah, I'll be happy to share those with public.
Would you send them to me then, please?
I'm sorry?
Would you send them to me then?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would be happy to have all of our questionnaires out there, provided all of us release it. I think it's very fair to the voters be able to see what exactly our stances are and whether or not you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Maybe you're saying one thing in one questionnaire, another thing in another questionnaire. So I think we should either all show them or not, but I would be 100% in support of all of us showing all the questionnaires.
Well, obviously, two of them are not sure they're going to. One definitely isn't, one isn't, one definitely isn't, one probably isn't.
Well, you know what? I'll set the tone and I'll be the first one to go for it. And I have no problem sending questionnaires.
Well, actually,
Peter
Peter
Sorry,
was
sorry,
first.
I'll second Peter's
Yeah.
motion. I'll second Peter's motion. How about
The
that?
first one that lands in
Yeah.
my email box, you
Amen.
get the first.
All right, that
How's
sounds good.
Okay.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yes.
That's fair.
So you want all the questionnaire we have ever answered, or?
For this campaign, the questionnaires you've
Okay.
answered, you know, send me your answer, send me your questionnaires and your answers.
Kelly, get on that right now. Peter, be in our race.
Okay, folks, thank you very much.
Okay.